My ex claimed I was an unfit parent to gain custody and completely panicked when the court saw the evidence I had been saving for months. I'm 36M and my ex Tara is 34F. We have a 7-year-old son, Mason. 6 months ago, she filed for full custody and claimed I was an unfit parent, neglectful, unstable, even dangerous for a while. It felt like everyone believed her, including her family and some of our friends. What she didn't know was that I'd been quietly documenting her behavior for months. And when the court finally saw what I'd been saving, the entire tone of the case flipped in about 10 minutes. Tara and I were together for 9 years, married for 6. We live in Colorado, just outside Denver. We split up a little over a year ago. She ended things, said she wasn't in love anymore, and needed to find herself. At first, it was relatively civil. We agreed on a temporary 50-50 schedule for Mason. 1 week on, 1 week off. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment 15 minutes away. We each had bedrooms set up for him. We were both at all the school events. It wasn't perfect, but we were. Managing. The problem started when she met her new boyfriend, Chad. He's 29, works in sales, very big on Instagram motivation quotes. They started dating about 9 months ago. Within a few weeks of him being in the picture, things changed. She started missing exchanges, showing up late, or texting last minute to say Mason wasn't feeling well on my days, but then posting photos of him at the zoo or the trampoline park with Chad. Mason started telling me he didn't want to make mommy mad by liking my house too much, that mom said you were boring. He'd slip things like Chad doesn't like when I talk about you, or mom says you don't know how to cook. For context, I'm not perfect, but I'm a stable, boring on purpose dad. I work as a network engineer, Monday to Friday, no criminal record, no substances, decent apartment. My idea of a wild night is letting Mason stay up past 9 to finish a movie. About 8 months ago, I noticed Mason coming over exhausted and wired at the same time. He'd say he stayed up watching TV at mom's, that she and Chad were fighting loudly downstairs, but it was just how grown-ups talk. He'd tell me he'd had fast food 3 nights in a row, or that he didn't do his homework because mom forgot, and then it was too late. I gently brought it up to Tara, said I was worried about his sleep schedule and schoolwork. She immediately went on the attack, said I was policing her house, that I was trying to control her, that I should focus on my own parenting. So I did, but I also started documenting. Every time she missed an exchange, I wrote it down. Every time Mason mentioned being left with her teenage cousin until midnight or sleeping on the couch because mom and Chad were loud, I wrote it down. I saved every text where she canceled last minute, every oops, overslept, every can you take in my plans. At the time, I didn't know if I'd ever use it, but I had a bad feeling. In March, things escalated. Mason was at her house for the week on Thursday night. I got a call from an unknown number. It was a neighbor of hers. He said, "Hey, I think your kid's mom isn't home. Mason is knocking on my door, says he can't find her." I drove over there faster than I should have, found my son in this neighbor's living room in pajamas, scared. He said he'd woken up and the house was dark, no Tara, no Chad. The neighbor said he'd heard knocking and crying and opened the door. Tara came stumbling in about 30 minutes later. She smelled like alcohol. Her eyes were glassy. She said she'd just gone for a drive and lost track of time. I took Mason home with me, told her we'd talk later. The next day, she texted me this long message about how I was overreacting and trying to make her look like a bad mom, that she had every right to a night to herself. I didn't respond beyond. Mason is safe with me. We'll stick to the schedule next week. That's when I started considering going back to court. But I also knew the court system is slow and biased to keeping status quo unless you have something concrete. So I kept my head down, kept documenting, got copies of Mason's report cards and attendance. Took photos of him when he came over with bruises from roughhousing and dirty clothes after several days there. Not abuse-level injuries, but a pattern of neglect, of being an afterthought to her social life. In May, I got an email from her lawyer. She was filing to modify custody, asking for full physical custody, with me getting liberal visitation at her discretion. Her petition claimed I was emotionally unstable, that I could not provide a consistent environment, that I was exposing Mason to inappropriate media and speaking negatively about her, causing distress. I read it 3 times. My hands were shaking. She also attached a statement from her mom about how Tara has always been the primary caregiver and I'm only involved recently, plus a note from one of her friends claiming she'd seen me yelling at Mason in a parking lot. No dates, no specifics. I called my own lawyer immediately. We'd used him for the initial divorce. He told me flat out, she's trying to flip custody, probably because someone told her she can get more child support or because her new boyfriend doesn't like sharing. The good news is you've been documenting. The bad news is family court doesn't care about feelings. It cares about patterns and evidence. We responded formally, denied her claims, requested a custody evaluation, and started preparing. My lawyer told me to keep my cool, not retaliate, not fire back in text, let her dig her own hole. During this time, Tara ramped up. She started emailing me instead of texting, clearly coached by her lawyer. Each email was full of lines like, as we previously discussed, you raised your voice at Mason last week when no such discussion had ever happened, or I'm concerned about the amount of screen time at your home. When Mason watches less TV with me than with her, it felt like she was writing for a judge, not for me. Mason picked up on the tension. He started getting stomach aches on transition days. He'd ask me, do you and Mom hate each other? I'd tell him, no, we both love you. We just disagree sometimes. I didn't badmouth her, even when every part of me wanted to. Over the next few months, I kept collecting. I asked his teacher, politely, to let me know if she noticed any changes. She said Mason was more tired on weeks after he'd been at his mom's, that his homework was often incomplete those weeks, that he sometimes came without his lunch. I'd already seen that on my end. Him coming home with school flyers I'd never seen, missed picture day forms, missed notices about projects. By the time our court date came around in August, I had a detailed log of every missed or late exchange for 6 months. Screenshots of texts and emails showing her canceling or asking me to take him extra. Photos and notes about the night she left him alone and the neighbor took him in. Statements from his teacher about homework, attendance, and tiredness. Copies of our original divorce paperwork showing we'd agreed to 50-50 and that I'd been involved from the start. Tara, as far as I could tell, had vibes in her mom's opinion. The week before the hearing, she sent me a long, dramatic email about how she never wanted to involve the courts but had no choice because I was unstable and refused to co-parent. She said she was documenting everything and that I should be prepared. I was just not in the way she thought. At the pre-hearing conference, I saw her in the hallway with Chad and her lawyer. She looked confident, almost smug. Her lawyer barely nodded at me. Chad smirked like he'd already won. I was nervous, but my lawyer just said, stick to the facts, don't react, let them talk. In the hearing, her lawyer went first, painted a picture of me as this angry, erratic dad who uses work as an excuse and can't handle the demands of primary care. He read from Tara's affidavit about how I'd screamed at Mason for spilling juice, how I don't know how to cook healthy meals, how my apartment was small and depressing. He brought up my childhood. My dad had a drinking problem and implied I might, too, despite zero evidence. Then it was our turn. My lawyer didn't start with feelings. He started with the night she left Mason alone. He entered the neighbor's written statement into evidence. The judge read it, eyebrows up. My lawyer then produced screenshots of Tara's text that night, where she downplayed it and called me dramatic. He asked her on the stand, did you leave your 7-year-old son alone in the house at night? She tried to spin it, said she'd stepped out for a short drive. The judge cut in, at what time? She mumbled, around 11. He said, and you thought that was appropriate? She went red. Then he went through the exchange log, every missed pickup, every late drop-off, every can you take in my plans. He showed how, in 6 months, I'd taken extra days almost 3 times as often as she had. He showed her own emails where she thanked me for covering last minute because she had an event. He asked her, if he's such an unfit, unstable parent, why do you repeatedly ask him to take your son on your time? She had no good answer. He brought out the teacher's statement, showed the pattern of incomplete homework and tiredness on her weeks. He asked, do you dispute that Mason is often late on assignments after being in your care? She tried to blame the teacher, said the school doesn't communicate clearly. The judge didn't look impressed. Throughout all of this, I watched Tara go from smug to pale. Her hand started shaking. She kept glancing at her lawyer like she wanted him to call a timeout. He just kept trying to redirect, but the paper trail was there. My lawyer never raised his voice, never called her names. He just laid out the pattern, calm and methodical. Then he handed up a stack of printed emails where she accused me of things that simply weren't true. And next to each one, he had the context, full threads showing her twisting events. For example, she accused me of raising my voice in the parking lot. And he had another parent's text from that day saying, you handled his meltdown really well, don't worry, because apparently I'd mentioned it to a friend at the time. By the end, it was obvious to anyone with eyes that she'd tried to weaponize the idea of unfit dad to get sole custody with very little to back it up, while I'd quietly been the one making sure our kid got to school, did his homework, and wasn't left alone at night. The judge didn't rule that day, said he'd issue a written order, but his tone shifted. He said, looking directly at Tara, allegations of unfitness are serious. They require more than frustration or disagreements about parenting style. He also reminded her that using the court to punish an ex rarely ends well for the child. When we walked out, Tara wouldn't look at me. Chad looked like he wanted to say something but didn't. My lawyer just said, whatever happens, you did exactly what you needed to do. Now I'm waiting on the judge's decision and try not to spiral. But for the first time in months, I feel like I'm not the crazy one. Update 3 weeks later. The judge's order came in last week, and Tara found out the hard way that there are consequences for playing games with custody. The court did not give her full custody, not even close. The order kept us at 50-50 on paper, but with some major changes. Instead of the simple week on/week off, the judge switched to a more structured schedule and built in specific provisions, including exchanges have to happen at school when possible, not at each other's homes, to reduce conflict. Any missed parenting time by either parent is presumed forfeited unless rescheduled in writing within 30 days. Both parents are barred from making derogatory comments about the other in front of Mason. Any overnight care by non-family must be disclosed in advance. He also ordered both of us to take a co-parenting class, and, more importantly, he ordered Tara to undergo a parental responsibility evaluation, basically a more in-depth look at her decision-making and home environment. My lawyer called me before I saw the order, walked me through it. He said, "This is the judge saying he doesn't buy her version of you, and he has concerns about her judgment. There are lines in the order about her poor decision to leave the child unsupervised at night and her lack of credibility in some of her statements." Tara lost it when she read it. Apparently, she thought at worst we'd just go back to the old schedule. Not that the court would put her under a microscope. She called me, voice shaking, and said, "I can't believe you did this to me." I said, "You filed to have our son taken away from me." I defended myself. She said, "You made me look like a bad mother." I said, "You did that on your own. I just brought the receipts." After that, she went on a PR campaign. She started texting mutual friends, telling them I ambushed her in court, that I humiliated her, that I twisted things. A couple of people reached out to me cautiously. I sent them a sanitized summary. She asked for full custody. Judge didn't grant it. Order evaluation. That was enough for most of them to realize they'd only heard one side. The real shift happened with her own family. Her mom called me, angry. "How could you drag my daughter through that?" She demanded. I said, "Your daughter accused me of being unfit and dangerous." The judge disagreed. He ordered more scrutiny on her. Maybe ask her why. There was a long pause. Then she said, quieter, "She told us you barely saw Mason, that you only wanted him now, that she's moved on." I said, "I've had 50-50 custody since the divorce. I never asked for less. I never tried to cut her out. Look at the paperwork." She didn't have much to say after that. A few days later, something happened that I didn't expect. Mason's teacher emailed both of us about a classroom issue. Something minor. She CC'd us both, but at the bottom she added a line to me privately. "I'm glad the court kept your time with Mason intact. He's doing well on your weeks." That meant more than it probably should have, knowing that someone neutral had seen the difference. The evaluation process for Tara hasn't even started yet, and she's already cracking. She texted me, "Do you plan to tell them I'm an alcoholic now too?" I wrote back, "I'm not telling them anything that isn't true and documented." She replied, "You're going to regret this." I didn't answer. The irony is I never asked for sole custody, my lawyer, and I only asked that the existing 50-50 arrangement be honored and that her overnights be more structured. If anything, the judge leaned harsher on her than I anticipated by ordering the evaluation. I think the night she left Mason alone weighed heavily. Meanwhile, Mason, the person this is supposed to be about, seems lighter. Maybe it's just me projecting, but he doesn't ask as often if we hate each other. He still has anxiety on transition days, but he doesn't cling to me a drop-off like he used to. I've stuck to the order to the letter. No bad-mouthing, no editorializing. When he mentions something wild from her house, I just say that's something to talk to mom about and move on. Last weekend, during my time, we were at the park and ran into one of Tara's friends, the one who wrote a vague statement for her. She looked embarrassed, said a quick hello, and hurried off. Later, Mason asked why she was acting weird. I said, "Sometimes grown-ups feel awkward when they realize they didn't have the full story." He nodded like that made sense. I'm not pretending I'm some perfect parent. I'm not. I work too much. I get impatient. I've raised my voice. I've needed to apologize, but I show up. I don't leave my kid home alone to go on a late-night drive. I don't weaponize the word unfit to try to erase the other parent from his life. Tara thought the court would just take her word for it, that if she cried hard enough and said, "I'm scared for my son," everyone would fall in line. She didn't count on someone keeping receipts or on a judge who actually read them. We're not done. The evaluation could lead to more changes down the line, maybe even a shift in custody if the report is bad enough. But for now, the attempt to paint me as unfit backfired hard, and the people who are ready to believe the worst about me have to sit with the fact that the court with access to all the evidence did not. Final update, 3 months later. The evaluation is done, the report is in, and Tara is living with the consequences of the story she tried to tell about me. The evaluator met with all three of us over the last couple of months, individual interviews, home visits, sessions with Mason alone, and with each of us present, she came to my apartment, talked to Mason about what he does here, watched us cook dinner together, checked his room, his school stuff. She asked me about my work schedule, support system, discipline style. She did the same with Tara, from what I heard, plus collateral interviews with his teacher and a neighbor who took Mason that night. She also reviewed a thick stack of documents, my logs, emails, the court filings, school records. Last week, we had a review hearing. The report was sealed, but summarized by the evaluator. She didn't sugarcoat. She said both parents clearly love Mason, but that there was a significant disparity in follow-through and reliability. She noted that I demonstrate consistent structure, appropriate boundaries, and responsiveness to Mason's needs, and that I appear to support his relationship with his mother despite ongoing conflict. Then she turned to Tara's side. She cited poor judgment in leaving the child unsupervised, tendency to prioritize social and romantic life over predictable routines, and a pattern of exaggeration and misrepresentation in describing father's conduct. That last part hit hard. She was saying out loud what I'd felt this whole time. Tara lied a lot. The evaluator recommended a change. Not full sole custody for me, but shift to me having primary physical custody, with Tara having every other weekend and one weeknight dinner, plus extended time in the summer if she completed certain conditions, parenting classes, individual therapy, and a follow-up review in a year. My lawyer had warned me this was a possible outcome, but hearing it was surreal. The judge asked Tara if she had anything to say. She started crying, said the evaluator didn't understand, that she was under a lot of stress, that I was making her look bad. The judge cut her off. Ms., this process is not about you looking good or bad. It's about your child's best interests. The evidence shows that your accusations against Mr. were unfounded, and that his home provides more consistency at this time. He adopted the evaluator's recommendations almost word for word. After the hearing, in the hallway, Tara lost whatever composure she had left. She came up to me, eyes red, and hissed, "Are you happy now? You took my son from me." I said quietly, "No, I protected him from what you were trying to do. You tried to take me away from him. This is the consequence." She said, "I'll tell him you did this." I said, "And he'll read the court records one day and see exactly what happened." Her mom was there, for once not glaring at me, just looking stunned. She said, "I didn't know it was this bad." I said, "You could have if you'd asked instead of assuming," then walked away. The first week of the new schedule was hard. Mason cried when he realized he'd be spending less time at his mom's. He asked if it was because he did something wrong. I told him, "No, this is because grown-ups made some bad choices. The court decided this schedule would help you have more routine. That's all." He asked if mom was mad at him. I said, "She's not mad at you. She might be mad at me, but that's between us." He still sees her. They still have weekends. She still has chances to show up. And I hope, for his sake, that she uses this as a wake-up call instead of another reason to see herself as a victim. Life at my place is a little busier now. I'm coordinating more school mornings, more lunches, more bedtime routines. I'm more tired, but I'm also less anxious. I'm not sitting by my phone wondering if she's going to cancel, or if he's alone in a dark house listening for a car that might not come. People around us have adjusted too. The mutual friends who quietly believed her worst accusations have either apologized or gone silent. I'm fine with both. I'd rather have a smaller circle that sees me clearly than a bigger one that thinks unfit is a word you can throw around because you're angry. Tara's family is split. Her mom has been more subdued, even polite in brief handoffs at school. Her sister still won't look me in the eye. I don't need them to like me. I just need them to stop helping with the narrative that I'm dangerous or unstable. The court's order did more to shut that down than any argument I could have had in their kitchen. I think about that stack of documentation sometimes, the notes I took when I was exhausted and doubting myself, the screenshots, the emails I didn't send when I wanted to rage. It felt obsessive at the time. It felt paranoid, but it turned out to be the difference between he said / she said, and here's what actually happened. Tara walked into court thinking she could say unfit parent, and the system would do the rest. She walked out with less time, mandatory classes, and a file that says in black and white that she misrepresented the truth. I didn't enjoy any of that, but I'm not sorry. I'm not some hero dad. I'm just a guy who refused to let a lie become the official story of who he is to his kid. Mason will grow up however he grows up, but at least now he gets to do it from a place where his reality, not someone else's anger, sets the terms. My ex claimed I was an unfit parent. The court looked at her story, looked at the evidence, and decided otherwise. She panicked when the receipts came out, but by then, it was too late. That's the thing about saving the truth. Eventually, it has a day in court too.